Okay. We are gifted with this time in history where we get to bring together the masculine and the feminine. And we are at this pivotal point, and I have heard from so many other women that I am very close to, intuitive with. They're just amazing, connected women, and they're experiencing some of the same things. And I want to talk about that in this video. We are, as human beings, being given the opportunity to move beyond it's the man's fault or this is the woman's fault. You know, like there were maybe times in history where it was the matriarch, and then we went through the patriarch. And we are now being initiated into the recalibration of what the divine union really means. You see, there's so much of a distortion of what the feminine represents or what the masculine represents, and very few of us are actually rooted in and living out in the remembrance of a balanced and reciprocal, healthy divine union. So we're going to get into that. If you've been feeling like, as a woman, you're like, I'm expressing myself, I'm feeling more pain in my body though, and I feel like the more I work through my things or try to make effort in the world, it's not working. If you feel like your cycles and your body is just asking you to just keep slowing down, and you're feeling more of a revival from your own intuitive essence, from your time within yourself, when you're feeling most alive, maybe you're alone, you're creating, you're taking space, you're setting boundaries. However, we're at this place where maybe that doesn't feel great. In the sense, it feels great for you because women have been dislodged and, you know, in the world and outside of themselves, outside of here. And so have men. And that's the interesting part of all this, because it's not the man versus the woman, the feminine versus the masculine. You see, we all have the divine feminine and masculine within us. We will all miss ourselves if we're not in tune with ourselves, if we're not living aligned to our soul essence or our own blueprint. In Ayurveda, they say that at the time of conception there's a blueprint created, and it is influenced by the parents' energies at the time of that conception. But that blueprint is what your health and wellness and your best life looks like. It's not what someone else on Instagram deems acceptable. It's not what's worked for your grandparents. We are all evolving so rapidly, especially right now. And what worked for them isn't working for us. You know, I'm a 32-year-old woman. The systems that everyone else has grown up in or that provided for them, you know, there was so much opportunity after World War II. There was so much money in the economy. There was money to stimulate buying and housing and ownership and all of that, and that's just gone. We are no longer in the industrial ages. We're no longer in an economy where people want to just endlessly work and tirelessly give themselves to a company, and then at the sacrifice of their own well-being or at the sacrifice of being bonded to their family. Where we should be bonded is within ourselves and to our community. And so we're seeing through a lot of these illusions to be about whether or not corporate America can survive the resurgence of the divine union, because we are all remembering this and we're no longer settling. But if we can have the structure with the flow come together, if we can have companies that honor the human experience come together and create whatever they're going to create That's beautiful. And that's what we're asking for. We're asking for the structure of the masculine with the flow of the feminine to come together in union. And there's such a distortion because when the feminine, like I was saying earlier, coming back to that point, when the feminine is starting to reclaim her boundaries, set what she needs, assert what, like, with dominance of like, hey, this is not, I'm not standing for anything less than this anymore. The patterns and the way that things have been, when she says that, it disrupts what has already been happening. And if you know anything, right, like even when we're raising our children, if you start a pattern one way and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm going to change it, what's that child going to do? They're going to resist, because we are all habitual beings, and having the habit is what helps us understand what to expect, how to behave, and that feels safe. So the safety comes from structure. What happens when we are in a structure that isn't safe, that is abusive, that takes advantage of the flow, the vulnerability, the movement of life? How do we be feeling safe in the life cycles, in illness, in personal growth, in having a new family, a new baby? How do we feel safe if we're experiencing illness or if one of our family members has died? When we can't recognize the sacredness of these life cycles and all of the initiation that happens within our own being, because we are divine beings having a human experience, that's not going anywhere. It's always the case that we are always evolving within our own spiritual evolution, within our own consciousness, and we came here to do that. We came here to evolve in our own understanding of ourselves and how we see the world. The problem is when the world is fucked up, then we get fucked up. Because when we're not living in right relationship to Mother Earth or Father Sky or with one another or within here to all of that, then we lose sight of what matters. And what matters is our own connection to divinity, our connection to each other, and how we cultivate life in a reciprocal, nurturing way where every being is provided for and is purposeful in the community and who is seen as purposeful and valuable. Why do we have such an epidemic of people saying like, oh, you have to advocate for your needs, you are valuable? Why are we saying affirmations where it's like, I am whole, I am valuable, it's safe for me to be authentic? When we live in a world where it's just already safe to be authentic, we wouldn't have to say these affirmations. I say the same thing with social justice. We want to support diversity and inclusion and all of these social justice efforts that we make, that everyone's so focused on and spending fucking millions of dollars, but you're not actually going into your own spirit and just saying, I'm going to uproot any separation I have from myself so that I can uproot any separation I have with anyone else, because we are all one. We can still celebrate and hold each other's diversity and celebrate the uniqueness that we all bring to the table, that we all have in this community. We can all bring our own cultural dishes and we can dance all of our favorite dances and still be in community. And that too will come online when we realize that the divine union and the divine feminine is one within us. And when the divine masculine and the divine feminine come into unity within one person, nothing else that individual has to do, because being then in divine reciprocity and compassion and loving awareness towards everyone else will just naturally happen. It will naturally happen. So maybe companies and we need to spend more time dropping into being. Hey, glad you're here. Dropping into your own being, coming into your own essence, and remembering what it's like to be alive in your soul. Because when you follow that, distortions just start falling away. And when we are within compassionate awareness and observation of ourselves, we can see clearly the illusions that are happening around us, but we don't entertain them. So what does that mean? It means that if you're expressing yourself in the world and all of a sudden you start feeling like people are shutting you down, calling you out, minimizing you, instead of going into the wounded place of, see, I'm not enough. See, this is why I protect myself. See, this is why I should have stayed home. See, this is why I shouldn't have posted that YouTube and I'll just go to my 9 to 5. That shit's over with. You want to know an economy that will survive all of this transition that's happening? You want to restabilize a market that decentralizes all of the institutions that profit off of us? Go directly to the person. Stop feeding the corporations. Go directly to your farmer. Set up local markets. Set up a local co-op of everything you need. Okay, you need a medicine person. And I'm talking herbals. I'm not talking pharmaceuticals. But hey, have a trauma. It'd be great to have a trauma person though, because, accidents happen. Sometimes you do need surgical or otherwise interventions. Remember, we're not negating one for the other. This is unity. So what else do we need in a community? To be self-sufficient. That's where we should be putting our energy to. Stop fighting the old oligarchy. When has it ever profited anyone to resist and fight against? You know why they still have a hold? Is because first of all, we fought. Well, that's cool. We should have done that. Well, I don't know. I'm all for being a hero, but, and being a warrior. But then they play the long game. Okay, let's see until you're tired out, until all your men are gone and the women are vulnerable. Let's see what happens to the masculine after he sees his family taken out and ripped away from him. Let's see what happens to the women when they have their babies taken from them and their protectors, and they cannot live off the land anymore. They become easy to control. Because when you take the life force basics, food, water, knowledge, and identity, aka who am I in the world, who am I in my community, belonging, and self-dominion, the desire to maintain authority over ourselves, then we lost the game. But we have a huge opportunity to come back into resonance, and that comes back to rooting out any separation that we have from ourselves. There's nothing in the human journey, like if we can just accept that our own personal evolution is guiding us and our spirit is guiding us, then there is no right or wrong. There is only staying on the path. So go where you need to go to learn the skills that you need to learn to then level up to the next game, to the next level of life for yourself, whatever that looks like. And then you'll be of service. Like once you're there, then you will naturally serve your community. You will naturally be a beneficial participant if you are already in wholeness and love and wellness within yourself. And so when you start asserting yourself in the world, you start chasing or you start becoming the person that you're meant to be, it doesn't matter if people start shitting on you. That has no place to root inside of you. if you're already in your own self-authority? What is one of the things I would suggest the most for coming into your own self-authority? Step process to coming into your own self-authority. 1, you recognize that you're outsourcing it. First of all, you have to see that that's happening. Second of all, you need to be brave and reclaim your self-authority and do whatever it takes to do that. That's the scary part. That's why we don't, because we don't want to go through the growing pains of whatever it is that we need to do to learn to be self-sufficient again. And 3, practice dropping into being. You are always going to be as weak as you are disaligned to yourself. Because as long as you are not in alignment with who you are and the divine within you, and you're not taking practice every day to make sure that you're staying in sovereignty right here, then they will get you every time. And by they, it could be the systems, or it could be the ideologies that are already within our brain that we were raised with. It could be that when your spouse says something snappy, and instead of seeing that as like, oh man, let me show support for them, it could be, I know, that's why men are like that. Judgment, shame, separation. We are conditioned for separation. We are conditioned to be out of alignment with ourselves. So the most radical thing you can do is come into alignment with who you are, because everything will start flowing from here. But I have to give you a warning. It can get pretty intense pretty quickly, because as you start saying, this is what I want, this is who I am, it's almost like that's the eye of the storm. And the storm is the delusion, illusion, the collective shedding, and your own personal psychic shedding that has to happen in order for you to see the sky clearly again. And it's like that distortion, to move through that distortion while consciously holding your truth and the truth of who you are, is some hard shit. Because you're still also building the capacity to stay in alignment. You know what I mean? So it's okay if sometimes you will get knocked back down. You will fall into your old programming. You will fall into the shadows, and that's okay. Because in that moment when you fall down, you can grab that flashlight and you can shed light on it. And instead of being a bully to yourself, which is their programming in you, instead of that, you practice the divinity that you are, and you say, oh, I see this thing here. Wow, let me look at it. And I'm just gonna look at it compassionately. I see. I'm not judging it. I'm not angry. I'm not sad. Maybe there's some grief, but I'm not wishing that it wasn't there. Not running away from it anymore. I see it. I acknowledge it. Wow. That's the embodiment piece. We experience it in the now moment. We don't try to move away from it. And then once that's there and you've processed it through your being, eventually you can rationalize. Say, okay, wow, so this is still in my shadow. That means the next time that this event happens that just triggered me to fall into my ego, I'm going to practice this instead. This goes deep, but I hope that this was a very good introduction for you. Lots of videos that you can go through to learn more details on how to do this work, dropping into being. becoming the conscious observer of your life so that you're not the character being played in the video game. You are the consciousness who designed the game, or just at least the player behind the game, behind the screen. And to wrap this all up in a nice little bow, if I could try to even do that, although we can start celebrating chaos a little bit more. Remember, wholeness comes with the divine union. You were never separate than the divine union. If you can just consider with me for a moment, and let me just tell you a little story. Now imagine a time in history, or herstory, our story, where the beings that came onto this planet were not male or female. They were both. They were all. This means these beings were androgynous. They didn't require one or the other to complete themselves. However, and in their beingness, they could experience life and personally expand without asking for permission, without falling into codependency, without questioning whether they had it within them to accomplish it, because they were already whole. Your divine masculine is ready to support, like the river banks of the feminine flowing waters. Sometimes she's raging and sometimes she's a steady flow. Your inner feminine, your divine feminine, loves being held by the masculine, by your masculine. And when your inner masculine and your inner feminine hold one another, it's not enmeshment, it's not expectation, it's not distortion or codependency. It is truth, unbridled, untamed truth of, I see your sovereignty all on your own. Without me, I see and support your potential. I see the visions that you have, divine feminine, and I will root them in as the masculine into this world so that we may be in this world but not of it. And I'm going to leave you with that. Happy evolving.